Howdy folks, and welcome back to the channel. I've got the results of the survey that I had done yesterday, so I wanted to spend this time in this video going over the things they pointed out in the survey and a couple of the repairs that I had to make. So I had the survey done by Derek Rhines from All Boat and Yacht Inspection. I think that's what it's called, and they're here in Annapolis. Derek did the survey back when we bought the boat about 5 years ago, so he had already seen it before. Overall, he said the boat was in above average condition for its age, and that it's been well taken care of, which is a nice compliment. And he increased the value of the boat. So earlier on, he had when he did the valuation survey, had a value, I think, of around $51,000 for the boat, what it was its market value was. And on this survey, he increased that to $61,000. So that's a good thing, I think, overall. But what I want to do now is kind of look at a couple of the things that he did point out in the survey that needed repaired, one of which was kind of an important issue that he discovered. One of the issues that he mentioned was the GFCI outlet that's in the galley here. It was right there. Wasn't tripping like it's supposed to. And I mean, he mentioned this when he did the survey the first time, and I forget what the reason is why I didn't replace it. But I went ahead and pulled it out yesterday, and I know I've pulled it out before, so I'm not sure why I didn't replace it the last time I pulled it out. But I went ahead and pulled it out yesterday, and then went to Home Depot, picked up another one. And one of the things that I wasn't sure, I think may have been the reason why I didn't replace it before, is this one, it's a brown color. And when you go to Home Depot, most everything is in white. And I didn't think they had a brown, but this one, it is brown. It says brown there. The package doesn't look brown, and I think the one they had on display didn't look brown. It kind of looked gray. So I think I may have just gone looking for a brown one, and I couldn't find a brown one. So, but I did look a little closer, and sure enough, that says brown, even though the package in the example they had in the store didn't look brown. But this one pretty much looks like the exact same thing, and it fits in the cover and everything. So I'll take that and attach this on there. It's actually a little bit shallower than the one that was on before, which is nice because that leaves a little bit more room in the box. On these outlets on a boat, what they're supposed to have, instead of like on a house where you would just take the wire and wrap it around the screw, you have to have ring connectors on there. So it already has the ring connectors on there, with one exception is the ground wire doesn't have a ring connector, and that's solid copper, so I'm not sure if that's the reason why it doesn't have a ring connector, but I may see if I can crimp one on there, or otherwise I'll just hook it back up the way it was and then leave it at that for now. So I'll get that fixed, and that will be one project off the list. And boom, just like that, that one is fixed, and the new outlet has a handy dandy little green light on it, and it is working like it's supposed to. Boom. And here in the battery compartment, I got three things that I need to work on. One is the battery. Particularly this battery needs to be blocked so it's not moving, so it doesn't move side to side. I mean, it doesn't move right now, but it's possible that it could shift. So I need to get a piece of wood and stick it on there, and then another wood block and stick it on the other side. So it doesn't shift back and forth this way. It already has a piece of wood right here and one over here that keep it from sliding this way, and it has the strap on it to keep it from coming out. So I need to get something cut to fit that so it doesn't move. Another thing that he mentioned was this terminal here is this one has 5 things going to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and apparently you're only supposed to have a max of 4. So what I need to do to this terminal in particular is probably get another bus bar and put a bus bar along the back, and then have the battery go to the bus bar, and all these smaller things go to the bus bar. So so that's number 2. The third thing is I should have covers over these positive terminals, which I knew that they're supposed to have on there, and my thing that I was concerned about, or I had a hard time doing, is finding one that was big enough to cover all this stuff. So he gave me an idea to do instead of like finding a pre-made one is I could just make one. So I have a bunch of this material here. This is the plastic glass material that goes in the Bimini and the Dodger that I've replaced windows and made a window for. So I can take this stuff, cut a piece that's big enough to fit over this area here, and take a zip tie and zip tie it to the big terminal. So I'm gonna do that on these 3 batteries, and then I got one more battery back in the back here. I'm gonna do that too. So I'll make 4 of these covers to go over, and the main thing those are for is so you don't accidentally hit the positive, like if you're working in here with tools and you don't accidentally cross the 2 posts with like a wrench or something. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut these out and cut some slots in them to zip tie them onto the main cable. All right, that was the easiest job of the day. So it's just these plastic pieces zip tied onto the wire. It covers up the terminal. I got one on these 3 batteries and one on the battery that's in the back there. So that project is done. Okay, so here is probably the biggest issue that was discovered in the survey. This hose here goes from the C strainer in the back there, you probably can't see, and it goes down to the raw water pump right here. And it's kind of sitting on this edge right here, and it's rubbing on that, and there's actually like a little groove in this side. Not sure if you can see that, but there's a little groove right there where it's been sitting on here and vibrating and rubbing that hole in there. So that's a bad thing. So I need to replace this hose. And I think when I replace it, what I'm going to have to do is I might try to cut it a little bit shorter so it stays a little bit tighter inside this space, so it's not resting up against here. I could try to put some kind of chafe protection on there, but I'd prefer just not to let it chafe at all. So I'm going to go ahead and unscrew those hose clamps, a couple hose clamps back there, and then I've already got my hose that I picked up yesterday at Faucet right here to replace that hose right there. And there it is, another project done. This hose replaced, and I cut it a little bit short, about an inch or so short on that end, to pull it a little bit away from here so it's not rubbing on here, because when the engine is running, especially when it's cold and it's vibrating a little, this hose is vibrating. So I think that's what caused that. The rubbing on this side was just rubbing up against this this piece here. So of course that project, like any project, required a trip to the hardware store because the pipe clamps that were on there were a little too small. This hose is a little bit bigger outside diameter than the other one was, and these were already like probably too small. And of course, the hardware store didn't have the exact size I wanted, so I ended up getting ones that were a little bigger than I'd like, with a little bit more tail on them than I like to have on there. But they work, and that project is done. And while we're down here in the engine compartment, another thing that the surveyor brought up was these little wires right here. So they're right attached to this side of the engine there, and there are 3 wires connected together, and those are bonding wires. So bonding wires, they go to all the metal parts on the hull, like the they go out to the shaft and to the chain plates and to the mast and all these other places and to the engine. So one of these goes to the engine, the other 2 go somewhere else, and there are 3 ring connectors hooked onto 1 screw. The proper way to do that nowadays is to put these all on one bus bar. So I've ordered a bus bar that I'll mount to the side of here, and I'll hook the one to the engine and the other 2 to the other terminals on the bus bar. And then there's a couple other spots around the boat, like up near the mast, that has the same issue. So I'm gonna put another bus bar up there. And then the other thing is the size wire. The wiring size is probably too small for some of these, like the one going to the engine should be a larger size wire. So I'm going to have to look at replacing or just going over the entire bonding system for the boat and making sure that all of the wires are the right size and they're connected properly. So another thing that he mentioned that I'm not sure how I'm going to fix, or if it's something that I'm just going to pass on, is the propane locker here in the cockpit area. It opens up like this, and this should be sealed. So there should be a seal of some sort around there, and this should be a locking latch, which it's not. It wasn't even made that way. But I guess it sounds like that's a requirement that came about later after the boat was made. So I'm not sure how I would go about converting this to a locking latch that would hook under the edge here. And then, or how I would put some kind of sealant around here, some kind of foam or whatever, plastic or rubber seal to go around here so the propane locker is sealed. It makes sense, because if your boat does, end up sideways or rolling over, you don't want this thing flying open and the propane tank coming out. So I'm going to have to think about that and see how I'm going to tackle that problem. Those were the big issues. The biggest one probably being that hose that needed fixed, because that's one of those things that does have the potential to cause a big problem later on. And then there were a couple other things that he mentioned, just kind of nice to have, and I have everything written down here. One of the things that apparently is a new rule with fire extinguishers on a boat is that they have to be inspected annually. Now, the Coast Guard doesn't say, or ABYC doesn't say who inspects them. They just need to be checked annually. So one thing he recommended doing was getting a marker and writing on there every year, like the date you inspect it. That's something I already do with batteries. When I put batteries in, I have an emergency strobe, and I'll change the batteries every year on that and just write the date of the battery on there when I put it in. So I'll probably start doing the same thing with the fire extinguishers. When I check them, just to make sure that they still have a charge, I'll put the date on there when I checked it. He also, I talked about the bonding system earlier, and there were a couple things related to that are probably going to have to be fixed. He also mentioned my galley sink. The galley sink hose is not in need of replacement, but it's getting there. And one of the things that whoever installed that did is the galley sink goes down to a seacock in the bilge, and attached to that is a piece of PVC pipe or something, and it goes the seacock to the PVC to the galley sink hose. So I'm gonna have to replace the hose and get rid of that PVC, because you shouldn't have PVC like that on a boat, because it can crack and stuff like that. I think that, looking at my list, I think that was pretty much everything. The other thing that he mentioned that I think I just let slip the last time he mentioned it, because he did mention it before in the last survey, was I don't have carbon monoxide detectors. And it's recommended that you have carbon monoxide detectors, and for a boat my size, he says it's 2. And the reason is not necessarily because your boat could cause carbon monoxide from the engine or from the propane appliance, but the bigger reason is if another boat in your area decides that they're going to pull it next to you in an anchorage and run their generator all night, and you've got carbon monoxide coming into your boat from their boat, that could cause a problem. So the marine grade carbon monoxide detectors are horribly expensive. The cheapest one that West Marine sells is $140 for one, and they're good for about 5 to 7 years. So I was able to find some slightly cheaper ones. They were around $65 a piece, I think, at Defender Marine. So I ordered those yesterday, and they should be here sometime this week. And then the last thing he mentioned was another thing he mentioned before that I didn't fix for a particular reason. On the Raycor fuel filter, so the way this boat works is from the fuel tank, the fuel gets sucked up into a fuel filter. It's a Raycor filter separate from the engine, and then from there it goes to the fuel filter on the engine, so it gets filtered twice before it gets into the engine. On the Raycor filter, it has a little bowl. In addition to filtering it, it separates water from the fuel. It has a little bowl on the bottom for where you can separate the water, and the bowl is made out of plastic. So apparently there's an ABYC rule that says that anything that has fuel in it has to be able to withstand a certain temperature over a certain time, and those plastic bowls apparently don't do that. So what he recommended is a heat deflector. They sell heat deflector kits for one brand of or one type of Raycor filter, and it's like the MA series filters, which I think are specifically for marine uses. The one I have is a different model. It's like an F or G series or something that is just kind of a general use. So they don't make a deflector for it. So I never, when I first checked and I tried to find the deflector, and they don't make one for it. So I just kind of let that slide, thinking that maybe if they don't make one, I don't need one. But he said, yeah, I do need one. And what he recommended is that I just fabricate something that can just be any piece of metal that doesn't necessarily have to attach to the filter, but just attach to the bulkhead where the filter is. That helps deflect the heat away from the bowl. So I'm going to have to work on fabricating some kind of piece of metal for that. And that will probably be sometime over the next couple weeks. So those were all the major issues that came up during the survey. So overall, I think a pretty good result. And he had mentioned in the survey, as I said earlier, that the boat was in better than average condition for its age, and just a couple things that I had to fix, so you can't beat that. Overall, I think it's probably a good idea if you have a boat, if you haven't had a survey, to get a survey done, even if you think you know what you're doing, because it's always good to have a second pair of eyes on that. And like I said before, I had to do this for my insurance, and we talked about insurance a little bit. And one of the things that I mentioned in the last video was that a lot of people online were switching from Geico to Progressive because they didn't require a survey. One of the things that he said was that you got to be careful with that, because in the Geico Progressive situation, if you have a policy with Geico, the way their policy is written, if, for example, your boat sank in the slip, what Geico would do is the amount of money that it costs to extract the boat from the water and take it somewhere, usually that's going to cost you like $25,000-$30,000 to do that. So what Geico does is they take that out of your $500,000 policy that is for general things that happen. But what Progressive does is they take that out of your hull value. So if you have your boat insured, say, for $50,000 and your boat sinks in Geico, it doesn't come out of that $50,000, it comes out of the $500,000 that insures the marina and other things that happen to your boat. If you have a Progressive policy, depending on how it could be written, is that $25,000 to remove your boat comes out of your hull value. And he said a lot of times what they'll do is they'll just say, they'll write you a check for the cost of your boat, say $50,000, and then you're stuck with having the boat pulled out by yourself at a cost of $30,000. So if you do switch policies to avoid a survey or something like that, it's probably a good idea to just make sure that the policy is what you want. But like I said, I would highly recommend that you get a survey done if you haven't had one, or if you haven't had one in a few years. It's probably time to get one. And if you're in the Annapolis area, I would highly recommend Derek Rimes from All Boat and Yacht Inspections. He's right here in Annapolis, but I know he does inspections all around the area, and he's got like dozens of years experience doing that. So he knows what he's talking about, and it's a good experience, I think. Even just to have him come on the boat, look around and chat with him for a few hours. So that's all I've got for this video. That's our survey. As far as what is coming up in the near future, the boat is pretty much, like he said, in decent shape. All my big projects are done. There's a couple other things that I want to work on. One of those is Bimini and Dodger, possibly replacing those just because they're kind of getting old and ratty looking. So that may be a big sewing project. Maybe if not this winter, or if not this summer, sometime during the winter. Another thing I've got planned for later on in the summer is I want to have the boat hauled out and the bottom painted, which I haven't done in a couple years. We do it every 2 years, have it hauled out, and so that will have to take place sometime. Usually I wait until it's hot in the summer and it's too hot to go sail, or there's no wind. So sometime in July, August time frame. At the same time, I got a couple other vacations scheduled. I got to go. We're going on a cruise, on a cruise ship to Alaska later on this summer. So we got to do that, and then a couple other things that I have planned in early August. and so sometime in between that I'll have to fit the hull out in the bottom paint. But that's all I've got for today, and I'll go ahead and wrap this video up and hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe if you haven't already.